Alright, we'll get started. My name is Pat. This is Yan. For our presentation and project, we've decided to redesign the museum experience. To get started, we're going to set a little context and explain what the problem is and current trends. So the traditional museum experience, it's one where you go to a physical location and you go to learn something. As time has progressed, this is no longer fitting. With the advent of the internet, and especially mobile web, information is everywhere. You no longer have to go to a brick and mortar building to learn facts. So museums now have to be not only a learning experience, but an interactive and kind of participatory experience. That brings in Museums 2.0. So this is the movement that a lot of museums are trending toward in making their exhibits interactive and participatory. We see this as a unique opportunity to serve, because museums are structured as nonprofits, and they really rarely draw the attention of innovators and designers. Another topic which we'll build upon a little bit is museum evaluation. So this is very similar to design research. This is when museums kind of evaluate, research their visitors, their exhibits, and kind of judge how well they're doing. So at a high level, our goal for this project is to increase the visitation to museums, and also for visitors, make their experience more engaging and more meaningful.
So here comes our research part. So as Pat mentioned, museum evaluation is a study which is really important for the museums, because museums use museum evaluation to determine the success of the exhibits and also to increase their user experience. So museum evaluation share like 2% to 10% of a museum's budget. And for example, the Science Museum of Minnesota, they spend $900,000 every year on museum evaluation. So what did museum evaluation do? So most of the time they do like visitor observations, tracking and timing studies, and also like interviews and survey and questionnaire. To be more specific, like for survey, museum evaluations, they do front-end evaluation, which means that they will interview the visitors before they went to the museum and ask how they feel about and what's their expectation of the exhibits. And here is our competitive landscape. So for this, we will take a look at, since museums have museum evaluation, what they will do by using this to increase their users' experience. So first, they provide audio tour, which is the most common thing we can see in every museum. And also QR code, which is you can scan it and get more information of specific collections. And also some like interactive stuff and make the visitor more engaged in the exhibits. And also private tour, so there's like a guide for you to give you more personal information. And special events which we are holding on holidays and festivals. So last one is most hot ones like applications. It's kind of used in every areas. And so here is a museum profile. So here are 3 museums we went to. The first one is Penn Museum. So you can see like the size of Penn Museum is like 300,000 square feet, and they have like 200,000 visitors every year. And then we went to Franklin Institute. We can see like from the data, Franklin Institute is much bigger than Penn Museum, and it has much more visitors. And the last one is American Jewish Museum. So this museum treats themselves as a startup company. So this museum was established 2 years before, and it has less visitors compared to Penn Museum and Franklin Institute. Even though these 3 museums are so different from each other, but they still have something in common, and we will talk about it later. So we went to this museum and do an observation to test how does the solution exist in the museum works. Like, will people really use the audio tool? You know, like in Penn Museum, even they provide an audio tool as price of $5 each. There are only a few people use it. And we can see like the interactive stuff are one of the most popular things. So people really like these kind of things. And we also like tested the GPS signal in the museum to try to test the wayfinding system in the museum, and it doesn't work. And also we went to Franklin Institute. We can see like clustering of groups, so we found that visitors tend to toward other visitors, and also museum provides some other service. They expect to the visitors to pay more in the museum, and also the signal doesn't work really well. So here is our user profile. So our users are from two sides. One side is the museum staff, so this including the directors, curators, and the other side is the museum visitors. So Pat will talk about interview.
So our next step was to get into the museums to research both on the expert side, so the staff and the administrators, and then also interview visitors. So we started off by interviewing the staff. First person we talked to was Minda Boren. She's the Director of Research and Evaluation at the Franklin Institute, and she's also very interested in social science and visitor movement throughout the museum. She gave us a really good introduction to museum evaluation and allowed us to build upon that. Secondly, we talked to Steven Snyder. He's the VP of Operations at the Franklin Institute. And he was really great for a high level in what some of the concerns and interests of museums are. Our next stop was the Penn Museum, where we spoke to Melissa Smith. She's really interested in increasing the awareness and public visitation, as well as modernizing the Penn Museum. There's actually a great article in the New York Times about 2 weeks ago about their attempts to do this. They're considering technology and making things more interactive through the use of multimedia. So in our final two stops, we went to the National Jewish History Museum. We spoke to Josh Perlman. The National Jewish History Museum is a great example of a Museum 2.0. They have amazing interactive exhibits that require people to participate and kind of leave their trace in the museum. And finally, we spoke to Christine Nelson. She really did a great job of advising us on the social environment of museums, how they should provide an environment that enables social exchange and also a place that enables learning. So our next step was to talk to actual visitors. We framed a questionnaire of 11 questions. This was basically prying into what motivates people to go to museums and what they're looking to get out of their experience. So some highlights from these interviews we conducted with over 25 groups, or approximately 25 groups. One thing that constantly showed up was a learning and exploring experience. People come as one of their main motivations to a museum to learn. They specifically come to see exhibits that are current or maybe somewhat well-known, or artists that are somewhat well-known. Another great driver for visitation is spending time with family. One young couple went even as far as say is that as long as the museum provides an environment that's comfortable and nice to be in, the exhibits become second. Building upon that, the sharing of memory. Museums are viewed as a social space, and one thing that we asked visitors was what activities did you engage in besides viewing the physical exhibits. And pretty primary was taking photos of the exhibits or photos of one another. And we asked why you did this, and they really expressed a need or desire to create memories and also to share those memories and knowledge learned with others in the future. And finally, non-dynamic collections. This comes to the fact that we asked, now that you've seen this collection, are you likely to come back in the future, and how often do you visit museums in general? And our response was pretty low. So most people did not feel the need to come back again in the future because they felt that the exhibits wouldn't change over the time they had seen what there was to be seen. And people also do not feel the immediate need to visit other museums because they feel that their collections are static and they're going to be there to view in the future. From here, we jump into some solutions. We're hoping to get some feedback on these. So. Okay, I'll do this. So to sum up the user needs and stories I just told, the problems and the user needs. On the right, we have our visitor needs. I'm sorry, on the right we have our visitor needs, and on the left we have our museum needs. So main concern for the museums is evaluation, and that feeds into increasing our visitor engagement. In addition, on the bottom, increasing visitation. To do that, museums are trying to create more engaging experiences and sharing opportunities for the visitors. And again, to reiterate our mission statement, increase visitation and also create more engaging experiences.
So here come our first solutions. So this solution is a way like you can store the photos, video, audio, all the experience you have while you were in the museum and store them. And we will send the data you have automatically and create a book or a map of your own. So by this way, you can record your own special museum memory with your friend and your family. And the user needs address here is like engagement and also sharing. And by collecting the data, which are the most popular for the visitors side, the museum can know which is the most popular exhibits. And the technology here we will use is like RFID localization and digital application and also digital interface. And for the physical implementation, we may use some sensors. They may be like a watch or book or something else. And the second one is an interactive salon. So this one is a device that you can communicate to the past visitors and the future visitors. So once you see a really exciting collections, you can leave a message, you can leave a comments, questions here. And when others come, they know the answers or they like your comments, they will reply you. And then we will push you a notification. You will get the notification that you can't read the message unless you went to the museum to check it out to see what they say about it. So the user needs address here is like visit engagement as well, and people want to sharing also like tell some stories, but also like we found people really like conversations in the museum. So they even like to talk to some strangers. So this one is just this kind of needs, like people have conversation museum. And also like the technology here is digital interface, and it's maybe a digital interface stuff in the future.
So for our next possible solution, we thought a solution to resuscitate existing exhibits. So a lot of museums are looking for low-cost solutions to kind of make existing exhibits more engaging. So using technology, this would take existing collections and put them into context, maybe applying them, or take a specific example, maybe like a collection of Roman pots. This would give these pots context and show how their design has affected the design of other objects throughout history and how it affects our everyday world today. So for this, we're touching upon user engagement and also evaluation. So again, this is a low-cost solution to breathe energy and engagement back into existing collections, and we will be doing this through localization via RFID, digital application, maybe a digital interface. And we see the physical implementation of this being a worn sensor as well as a digital interface. And our final idea is a customized tour. So based on the user's info, maybe their age, their occupation, maybe their likes and dislikes, this will create a customized tour. Once you input your information, a map, maybe similar like a treasure map, will be created and guide you through the museum. And while it's guiding you through the museum, provide additional information that's not normally found in the museum to build upon curiosity gaps that may have been opened by seeing the exhibits. And again, similar to the technology of the prior one, we're going to use RFID localization to kind of wayfind people through the museum, digital application, and a digital interface. And again, the one sensor and digital interface would be our physical implementation. And just for our timeline, where we are now and where we plan to go in the future, this is what we've done so far this semester, starting with concept, project and concept definition, research, user definition, problem definition, ideation, and now solution generation. In the future, we're going to be taking and maybe combining some of our proposed solutions, whittling them down, developing them further, working on a business model, mock-ups and prototypes. We'd like to get some user testing. Also, we really want to take into consideration interaction design, and finally, getting user feedback and functional testing.
Questions from the gallery? Comments? Yeah.
I guess I'm curious to know through like your research and these, potential solutions that you're proposing, really who the user is and who this is benefiting in the long run. Like, I mean, are you focused, like, it seems very kind of broad right now, like, who's it really benefiting, I guess? Like, is it school groups or is it, you know what I mean?
So yeah, I think the ultimate goal is to have it like a one-size-fits-all solution for multiple museums. The demographics for museums vary greatly depending on the museum. So we want to create a platform or solution that could go into almost any museum, and via like tailored maybe software, it could meet the needs of their specific field. And on the museum side, we're hoping to provide useful information to kind of reinforce what they're doing right and point out things that they're doing wrong, so they can further develop exhibits and kind of push visitors to visit.
I generally enjoyed the presentation. The only real criticism I would have of it is it seemed like rather than paring down stuff, you decided to talk as fast as you could to get it all in time. Which I have to admit made it a little difficult for me to follow and keep up. I think you did do a good job of getting a great deal of information and synthesizing it into a plan, into something you can get your hands around. Whether it remains that through the next semester of development will be interesting to see. Because I think some of it is making a certain amount of assumptions. And some of the concepts may need to be combined in order to make sure you have it there. But I think in general you pull together a lot of great research and put it together and do a good presentation. And I think the seeds of some good ideas that we're going to have. I really enjoyed it.
So I think you did some things really well with this. I agree with Peter. I think the intro was really nice, how you framed the problem. I thought the way that you analyzed the visitor needs and then the way that you kind of brought it together, tried to synthesize the matching of the visitor needs and the museum needs was nice. I was missing more synthesis on the museum needs side. I feel like you guys could gather a lot of data there, but you haven't told us how to think about it enough that it really informs the problem. And I think the ideas really suffer from that because it's clear to me how those ideas help the visitor, but it's not evident that it helps the museum with their evaluation. So I think you guys really need to take that stuff seriously because I think, to me, the potential here is if you really can scratch an itch for the visitors and the curators, not just you're helping them draw people to the museum, but you're also helping them understand what's working and what's not. And basically what you're doing is you're, whatever they invest in your system is money they're already spending somewhere and they already have budgeted. So I think that really helps your business model, and I think it can really help you guys create a platform that is useful for multiple types of museums. But I think you need to force yourselves to really push it to become that. So I still would love to see more nuances with the ideas and actually a little more diversity of the ideas. And what you might want to do is start to map out its ecosystem to say, what is the museum doing here? What are the visitors doing here? And what is this product doing at any given point? And how are people interacting with it? And how is it providing value to the different players in the ecosystem? I think that would really help. The other thing that was a little worrisome in your ideas is the physical manifestation was always like some sort of sensor. So I think you guys have to just push yourselves, your ideas are great, there's some really interesting stuff there, but push them farther to say, is this Okay, so we have this one idea for, the one I'm most excited about. The one I'm most excited about is the first one. But if you push yourself to say, what are 7 different ways that I could deliver those benefits and deliver benefits to museums, I think you'll get to something really good. So I'd love to see you do that.
I think Sarah touched on something that if you start investigating, it may change your whole perspective on the whole thing. And that is, you come up with a number of ideas for output on the visitor side, but no discussion of what the output needs to be on the museum side. And that may have a huge impact on where those concepts go.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I think, yeah,
Agree with that?
I'll touch base with you guys afterwards. Just to share some general thoughts too.
Okay.
Just to add on to what you were saying, Sarah, I mean, I know for a fact, I have good friends that work at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural Sciences. Most museums only display some portion. I know that they, as a museum, only display 10% of what they actually have available for exhibits. So that kind of feedback is paramount. You know, at the Smithsonian, they have specific curators for specific artifacts, and that might be something else as well. But I think that idea of, you know, when you were talking about the QR codes and things like that, one of the things I do with my small children are scavenger hunts, and you know, queuing into things, and always, you know, that seems to me that a great thing of learning at a museum is not what you learn right there, but you learn the piece next to it and so forth, and then building upon that. And that, I think, kind of information is going to be really critical to the exhibit designer and the exhibit putting together to kind of decide what goes in the museum.
I don't know if they might disagree with this, but the term visitor to me is just extremely broad. So I feel like to figure out various solutions or ideate around those solutions that you've created, it might be helpful to focus in on. These are school children who are, it's field trips, because you put up those different museums that you had up there, but the visitors for each of those is totally different. I know the MoMA, but they're going to the Penn Museum to see my exhibit, or
Really good point.
I think that's a good point, and even if you ultimately want to create a platform that lots of museums can use, it might help your ideation if you think about, okay, this is a couple going to a museum on their first date versus school kids on a field trip versus a family with guests in town, and designing for those different experiences.
Maybe it's also regularity.
Kids.
How frequent, could be also frequency.
Yeah.
How regular, people are regulars there, one-timers there.
Last thing I'll say. This reminds me, as I hear people talking about, and I've seen the project evolve a little bit, it reminds me a little bit of Checkmate in the sense that you kind of have 2 customers, right? People are going to museums and people actually run the museums. People who run museums are going to be buying this, but if people who go don't use it, then why would the museum buy it? If it's really about user engagement. So you kind of have this decision to make, is are you gonna do back-end things to help the museum that maybe the users see, or it's monitoring them, but they don't really have to interact with it? Or are you gonna push to build a system that the users interact with, and you're gonna make every museum need it? And that's a slightly different way of looking at the problem, it might not be. Rather than saying, we need to make users need it, and museums are gonna want this right off the bat. It's sometimes tough to bridge both of those, because you're essentially trying to solve 2 problems simultaneously. So I know that helped me, sometimes it can get a little tricky when you start getting into the details of it, but I think you guys have a lot of cool concepts. There's a lot of interesting ways you can go with it. I mean, Sal talking about scavenger hunts, that would be great for schools, right? Keep the kids engaged in museums. And I don't know how museums feel about facilitating those types of interactions, but maybe those are the questions you should ask. Is not, how do you guys do your curating, but what do you want to see people doing in the museums? I thought it was good.
So lots of good stuff in there. Nice job.
Thank you.